All right. Thank y'all for joining us on another episode of Potheads Pondering. Today, we have Nadia, just call me Nas Miller, an entrepreneur and business consultant, here to give us the game. Nadia, you want to say something?
All Thanks for having me, Lada.
You're welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Nadia, just call me Nas Miller. My pronouns are she, her. I was born on the hilltop of Tacoma, Washington, raised in Seattle, the North End, like the real North End, 98103 in Greenwood. I am a mother of two. I homeschool my sons, which is like my main focus in life. I am an entrepreneur. I have been for almost 10 years now. My background is in hospitality, guest service, customer service, in all different realms, hair, massage, beauty in general, also dining, and taking all my experiences working for other folks, kept what I like and got rid of the stuff that I don't like and help specifically Black-owned businesses, small businesses, either scale their businesses up or meet them where they're at to further flesh out their ideas. In some cases, I'm actually just like telling them how to get their business license. So, business development consultant, among other things. I'm right now shifting into more of my artistic creative phase. And I think we're going to talk about that a little bit more later. So I'll leave it at that.
Yes, a fabulous intro. And the reason why you're here, I guess most folks are wondering, because we haven't said nothing about weed in that whole spiel, is because here at T.B.C, the one thing that we notice most cannabis entrepreneurs or like business owners do not know how to do is run a business. Like they can grow weed, they understand the plant fully, but business processes, how to actually treat a labor force, and the whole, like, it just seems to be something that was missed, right? Because truthfully, there's a person that liked growing a flower, liked maybe hand-to-hand service, like sales, like they were in way different fields, and now they find themselves in the role of being a business owner. And if you don't get an MBA, you kind of mess that up. So individuals like Nadia, business consultants, can be helpful to the cannabis industry. It's like a very, very needed, much needed position. And I thought, why not have you on the show? Let's get the ins and outs, a little dirt of what is a business consultant and how it could help fellow entrepreneurs, because it's hard out here. It's hard. So what got you consulting?
Well, I wanted freedom. I was tired of working for big corporations and people who don't look like me or understand my experiences as a Black Indigenous woman. I was just way over that. You pointed out, this people hop into business and a lot of folks are like, they've got this grand vision, and a lot of folks have the privilege to just be like, yep, I'm going to do it, but have never played any of the roles, the supporting roles that actually make those businesses function. And therefore they forget those very important pieces when they are running their business. And you can usually tell when it's places like that. So it was freedom. I wanted to be free. I know that for, again, as a Black person, that a solution to a lot of the systemic racist issues that we face is learning how to maneuver within them. So like learning how to maneuver within capitalism is one way that we kind of are able to combat how capitalism does not benefit us. And so I also come from women who are hustlers as well. My mom is an entrepreneur. She's been a business owner for 25 years. My aunt who raised me, she's, executive level manager in all the different businesses that she's worked for, Microsoft. Now she does her own consulting for like City of Seattle, Auburn, all these other places. So it's just kind of like in my blood. And yeah, but freedom was the biggest thing. I also wanted my sons to know that like, you don't have to go this traditional American way that we are fed. Like you don't have to go to college immediately following high school. Sure, you don't even have to go to high school if you don't want to. Like you could skip that, go, do Head Start, Running Start, or if you have the idea of what the business is, that you are passionate about, like, well, you just so happen to be in a family where we can help you make that a reality. So, just trying to kind of be the change. Because yeah, I think us being business owners is super, super important to taking back our freedom and giving us more ownership, creating generational wealth.
Absolutely. I have to wholeheartedly agree. I come from a family of immigrants, so I am the only American. And just seeing that and paying attention, like they bought into the whole American dream, right? So I had to go to college. Like I was going to be a doctor. These were the choices like that were fed me, and I'm in college like, yo, this sucks. Like I'm stressed, I'm depressed. I don't know if I want to be here anymore. But in college, and I quickly realized like whatever else this is gonna be, one, I'm gonna get the degree because I'm in debt already, and two, like I'm gonna use this as a networking opportunity. And that kind of first started joining my sorority, just giving me connections to, okay, there's much more to this. And eventually it got to the point where I got frustrated working for, I became a vet tech, working in a corporate environment and realizing that you can still run huge businesses and treat the people that actually make your business money like shit. So with that's kind of that, and my love of cannabis influenced me to figure out a way to have a slice of capitalism so that I could like reach back and grab my homies who are doing things in ways that they don't need to be doing. Like there is a legal avenue and route, and someone has to figure it out, and that's like what got us to where we are right now. So much respect.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, reaching back, because that was the one thing that I didn't touch on is that I love helping people. I love educating people. I love training. That was always my favorite role that I played in management positions, is like teaching somebody new, like onboarding a new player. And so, and I think, another thing that we know along with like starting businesses to help move us forward as a people is also like sharing as much game as you can. When I first started my journey as an entrepreneur, there wasn't like, I didn't have a ton of money to ingest. I like tripled down on the networking aspect, and also so it's like making relationships, genuine relationships, listening to people, because a lot of the times that's like all the, like, people just want someone to talk to, and like or to have someone really, really listen to them. And what I realized I was able to do is be like, oh, like I can identify, I hear what you're saying the issue is, and I actually have a solution for that. Like, let me connect you to this resource. Let me connect you to this person that I know, because I think that they can help you. And so it was and still is a lot of doing that just for free. Like it's a lot of free game that I do, but I've seen how like just giving that out, it comes back to me like tenfold.
Right. It's good karma. And I think the worst thing you can do is be a gatekeeper. Like that's our problem. We're being kept out of the playing field. And if you really think about America, they respect like UBI numbers. They respect business license EIN numbers. Like they count almost a little bit more than your social security because of just the shortcuts you can get on your taxes, on everything by just navigating that business world. And a lot of it is who you know. Well, business consulting is a broad subject. And like you talked about like networking being, something that you saw yourself good at, but like, what's your specialty,
Yeah, it's definitely listening. First and foremost, what I've found, especially with my most recent projects that I've been working on, that I'm more of this like mental health spiritual advisor. Like sometimes it's just, and actually not just sometimes, most of the time, people need to be reminded like that their thoughts are powerful. I mentioned that I'm transitioning, right now with my services. And as much as I love being able to help people like look at their functioning business and be like, oh, these are the documents you need, these are the roles you need to hire for business. What I love even more is being able to help someone recognize how powerful they are and how powerful, and that their mind is like their greatest asset, and that if they are able to stay focused on what it is that they want, then they can manifest that reality. Um, and I find that that's like really what people need. They just need someone to be like, hey, like you got this. Like, and again, just someone to listen to them with so currently I am on contract with my mother who has several business entities. And it's been very interesting because most of what she needs is just me to listen while she downloads on all of the things that she's got going on. So I would say that that's definitely my expertise is listening for real, hearing what you're saying, identifying the issues, and then coming up with solutions. Also, depending on what type of business we're talking about, observing. So, it might be me shadowing you, doing what you do if you're like an entrepreneur that's doesn't have a brick and mortar, right? Like I might have to like spend a week riding along with you while you take your calls, whatever it looks like. Or I may have to go into a restaurant and shadow their employees, come in as I've probably already, been a guest in your space. So I have that experience, but now I need to see like, okay, what is that server going through on a Monday afternoon compared to that Saturday night server and the bartender? Because I have experience in all of those positions, it's really easy for me to be like, oh, here's the problem. This is why you're seeing, why you're, da 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 da.
Sales are diminished, XYZ. Like,
Mm-hmm.
right.
So listening and observing, and then again, just connecting folks with resources. There's only so much that I can do most of the time. I've been blessed that I actually have never had to go out looking for contracts. All of my opportunities have just flowed to me. And what's other than the fact that I don't have to go searching, that allows me again to give a lot of free game. So at a bare minimum, I will tell you like the few steps that it takes to go get the license, the business license, and register in the places that you need to register and things like that, so that you have that UBI and the EIN, which is the two things that you need technically, right? And then point you in the right direction so you can go get a bank account set up, because those are like the bare minimum things that you can do. And then just kind of, helping people get over that, like, that fear and the overthinking of it all. That's a huge piece of like why. So and also I've noticed that even in our own community, like there's a gatekeeping around that. It's like, oh well, I've heard so many young Black folks be like, well, so and so, my elder told me that it was going to be this much money, or is this hard, or did it, and I'm like, no, it's not. I mean, of course there's levels, like depending on what type of business you're pursuing. Like, yeah, you may have to pay a little bit more. Yes, there may be additional things that you need to look into once you buy your LLC or whatever it is. But what I be telling folks is like, if you have the idea, just go get that UBI, get that EIN as a consultant, because you're an expert in whatever it is that you do, even if you haven't started. And so it's like giving folks that confidence to just take the leap if they're really ready. And not everyone is ready, right? So that's again where the listening comes in. Like if I'm listening to your situation, you're not in a place where you need to be like quitting your job and like going full-time entrepreneur. I'm not going to tell you to do nothing like that. I'm going to tell you, hold on now, stack that bread, come back to me, we'll talk about it, but keep that paycheck coming because you got to feed your kids and shit, things like that. But I would say those are the things.
Okay.
Those are the things that I'm experting.
I have to say that is the most Pisces answer I've ever heard. Keep it moving.
A Pisces I am.
Right. Like, I just let people emotionally download and share. And it's the truth. People want to be seen. And I think that's kind of where we got to with my brand. Like at first it was just me posting stuff, but it wasn't until I attached my brand with me and my personality that it like started to make sense to other people. They have to spend time with me to understand the lifestyle that I live, right? So like if I'm selling that, then I need to infuse me in all of it. That's when I got on camera, because generally I'm not an on camera type of person. I'd rather just be like making sure the scene or the vibe and all that stuff is going correctly, but off to the side. And then I started to have to be a host. But the truth is I like talking to people. I always have. So it wasn't that complicated for me to translate it, but I had to get over my own like fears of like, what if I sound weird? Well, if I sound weird to you, you're not my target audience, and that's okay. Right?
Yes.
Like you're gonna reach who you need to reach. So just do it, but commit. Like if you want to do it, commit to the idea, because writing things down, it becomes tangible, it becomes real. Like I thought of T.B.C since 2013. Like I sat back and I looked around and I was like, okay, this would be really dope. But it wasn't until 2017 that I started like getting Instagram pages under that handle, like getting SoundCloud, and doing those pieces made it more real to me, to where I kept doing it over and over again. And then when I had my free time and some capital to invest in it, get the UBI number, get, you know what I mean, get a CPA, figure those pieces out. You get there, and then you start accumulating overhead, right, as a business, and you got to figure out, one, how to earn income. And that crazy part is where you actually need a business consultant to help you like strategize, be a little bit smarter. You know, like thankfully the internet is there and you can figure it out. Like if you know how to hustle, you know how to hustle. So it translates into the business hustle. But that role is so important, because so many entrepreneurs, they cannot do that translation. Like there's a point where you have to turn away from methods that you would use in the everyday world to like just smart strategy. You know, like if I can save money by writing the contract X, Y, and Z ways, or just certain things, you know what I mean? Like, okay, yeah, how long does it actually take your staff to do this one task like that you're requesting of them? And if you can't account for that, then you won't even know how many hours you're going to have to pay them for their job. Like just that simple concept doesn't, so then your labor cost is a lot higher than you anticipated it at the end of the billing cycle, right? So having someone sit down, assess what you got going on, and get you right is much needed. I kind of attested to how do you think this could be applied to the cannabis industry, but how do you, Nadia, think it can be?
And it really is, you know, my Pisces answer is a Pisces answer, because it is so much like an individual experience. Like no one business is going to be the same as the other, even in a chain. You know what I'm saying? Even if it's a chain restaurant where they have these set rules and standards, the fact that you have a team with these different people, different personalities, like you have to know how to, and you're in a certain location, geographically, so you have a certain demographics, like you have to know how to meet those people where they're at. So consulting is so very much like, it's not a one size fits all. It's I gotta custom make this to you based on what you need and where you're at. And so when I think about the cannabis community, what I've heard for sure, it's like it's a front end and a back end, I would say. It's a guest experience and an employee experience that I would look at first. I hear like we were connected through some political, political issues in the cannabis industry. We're in Washington State, where things have been really quiet lately, or maybe I'm just not paying close attention, which could be very real. But the past few months, we've just been experiencing like the craziest rates of like robberies in cannabis stores, murders, just a lot of violence. And so, of course, you're thinking like, well, damn, what about these people who are working there? And I do have some friends in the community, so I've heard what it's like with these places that pop up and there's just no infrastructure in place. It's like the wild, wild west, essentially. So I know that needs help. I know that I could probably go, I know the companies that have pretty good feedback from their people, just from conversations with you and like other folks. But a majority of places I could walk in and probably be like, hey, how's your experience as an employee here? And here are a gazillion red flags, right? And it's really that simple. And then also from a guest experience, like I've heard, I've had my own experience in cannabis shops where I'm like, okay, you do a great job of helping me, who's like not a connoisseur by any means. I don't think I'm super knowledgeable on cannabis at all. But I know what I like. Like I know how I want to feel rather.
Right.
Because I still forget what sativa does, and I still forget what indica does. I feel like this is how I feel. This is how I want to feel when I leave here, and I don't, and just give me joints.
No, but I think that's great. You're actually my favorite customer because 90% of the time, most customers don't know how they want to feel. So then I have to be like, well, what are you doing for your night? And figure out how I want to make you feel for that night. You know what I mean? Or what do you use cannabis for? Like those sort of questions. This transaction has now added like 10 minutes in truth. And inside, I really want it to be done rather quickly, because you're not like, not to say that you're not a customer. Like this experience needs to be short for you. You want to enjoy the experience. You want to be told, but I don't need to spend time educating you about the plant because that is not where your interest lies, right? And the conversations that excite me as a bud tender are very brand newbies that are now trying to treat some sort of medical ailment or like try to figure out their journey down with cannabis, like down the road with cannabis, or someone who really loves weed and I can start like geeking out about strains. Like those are my favorites. So the in-between ones, I just want to help you get what you want and get on your way because that's ideally the experience you're looking for. And a good bud tender can assess that rather quickly in a conversation and play their role. But you're right, the guest service experience, like that's not trained. That's innate. You know what I'm saying? Like I figured that out just because I'm good at talking to people. So like if you're like halfway on your phone real quickly, like your movements are rapid, body language, it all leads me to put you in a category. And yes, sometimes I can change that category with time, with relationship, but there's no training in the Washington cannabis industry to be this type of bud tender, which is what we're working on at T.B.C. So give us some time. Give it some time.
And that's such a good point because it's what I've heard so much from bud tenders is like, I just came with all this knowledge. Like I explore this, I research this on my own because I love the plant. And so again, we have this concept of experts in their field with folks who did not, most folks, because I know that they're offering courses now in cannabis, but like most folks are just self-taught. And so like, but it's hard to get acknowledged for that with the systems as is, which is why these companies are able to be like, oh, we're just gonna pay you this minimum wage to do this thing because you're not credentialed. You know what I'm saying? You didn't take some class that says that you're an expert in cannabis. And that's what we're challenging because it's like, no, not only do I have more knowledge than you do on this plant and its effects, but I also have the experience. I have the customer service experience. So I'm showing up for your client and I should be valued more and so here's a huge takeaway I have from my time working for big corporations is just that
tell them
when you value financially, but also just as a human, when you value your team and acknowledge their strengths and express gratitude for the work that they do and the growth that they experience, when you keep your team happy, they take care of your guests. And that's how you keep the money flowing. But when you start to neglect them, and it's really tough if you're like in middle management, which is where I spend a lot of my time, where it's like you have this director level person who's like, well, I want it this way, I want it that way. And then you're the person who has to translate it into action with your team. And your team's like, well, why do we got to do it like this? It doesn't help us. Like it makes our job harder. It's a tough place to be in. And so that's a lot of the reason why I got out of it too, is because like, I'm trying to tell you, big boss, that what you're saying doesn't calculate because it actually makes things harder, but because you think that as a big boss, you know everything. You haven't touched a dishwasher or a serving tray in 15, 20, 25 years, maybe never, but you think you know how this service runs.
Right. You're wrong.
You know, you're wrong. And I don't care how, and like, so a little bit more about me, like the last job that I had, I was making the most money I had ever made in my life. And I was coming up with all these ideas of how to make the guest and the employee experience better, how to elevate this place that we were in, which is like a historically significant building. I'm like, these are the things that, I'm literally like writing full documents on how this place should flow, just for them to be like, I don't know, like I don't like, maybe we'll get to this later. And it's like, but this addresses the issue that you're complaining about, that they're complaining about, like everyone's complaining about this. I'm telling you, here's the solution, and you still don't value me enough to let me implement it. And that's what a lot, that's when you start to lose your people. That's when loss prevention starts to escalate. That's when you start to see like, oh, now we're operating the red because employees don't want to pay for their soda no more. You know what I mean? Right. They don't want to pay for you owe me, at this point, because you don't value me. And then your guests will feel that as well, because they're like, oh, these people, shit, I walked in here and didn't nobody say anything to me. I'm one of those who I'm like, oh, no one's speaking to me. Like, what's going on up in here? You can't look up from your phone. Like, to me, as a consumer, that's a red flag to me. I'm like, oh, your people don't feel taken care of. I can tell off top. Right. Your people don't feel taken care of. And so business owners, I don't remember what the question is that you asked me, but
I was asking how you think this could be applied to the cannabis industry, but you've done it.
Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, it translates. Yeah. It translates. Yeah. So that's what I know about this cannabis industry, is like, they're not taking care of their people. And the thing that's so specific about this is like, because it's such a profitable industry, they're getting away with it. But I'm also hearing now that
oh girl, the numbers are down. The sales are down.
Right. That's what I'm hearing.
I've looked at the chart from January of 2018 all the way to May of this year. And when I tell you we doing this, we are doing this. And so now what they're doing, their tactic is using any excuse they can to cut labor force, right? And so they're operating on a shortened number of like staff members, open shifts. So the managers are doing more than just being a manager. They are being a bud tender. What does that do? Ruin the experience, because they can't actually think of ways to improve what our main issue is in sales. And truthfully, these places usually cannot keep quality bud tenders, such as myself, and many others, because like quality bud tenders are going to tell you how to improve the experience, not only for your customer, but for them there. Like they're going to try over and over again. But once you spit in their face too many times, then it's like, I'm not going to try. And in fact, I'm going to start looking for another job, or you're going to find a way to get rid of me because you're going to hate me calling you out on all the illegal shit you doing. You know?
Yeah, that's so real. It's so real. Right. And especially the time that we're in now. Right. It's a sign of the times in such a real way. We've got young people who are like, I don't know how to be here. I don't got to be here. I'm going to go find the next job, especially where we're at in Seattle, where there's never a shortage of jobs. I know they've been saying there's a recession and I know that there is a recession, but in all of my days living in this city, and we've lived through a recession before, right? I'm 33. I know for a fact that I could go to a Jack in the Box and get me a job.
Right.
And it's not glamorous, but I know I can get me a job anywhere and get me a check anywhere in this city. So you can't expect people to stay in this day and age in a place that they're miserable, especially when they are experts in their field.
It makes no sense. And what's actually happening in the cannabis industry is that people are getting so fed up that they're leaving it. Like, well, this is not what I came into it for, so I'm just going to use it as a stepping stone. Or the smart ones, the ones who really care, use it as a stepping stone to further their brand, smartly, like and get in and get out, get the experience on your resume. So yeah, I did it legally from this time to this time, but the rest of it, the stuff that I already had within me, like I'm doing it for myself now because you don't value it. And I was happy to do both. Like there are people, if they care enough about cannabis, they're willing to work very hard. Like growers very
Mm-hmm.
rarely take vacations simply because like I'm running crops year round, especially if it's an indoor situation. If I don't have my team with me on the right, like I don't know if I can trust you to care for these plants. So you need my
Right.
expertise visually to make sure they're not sick. Like one day of no AC or no fans in a grow room can ruin what you got going on. So they dedicate weeks and hours of their time to this plant, and they want to feel like that work means something to the people that's paying them. One, in their check. Okay, cut the check.
Yes,
One,
hello.
two.
First and foremost.
Like treat me like a human being because you need me. And most of the what happened in the industry out here is that a lot of the business owners are businessmen or people who had capital, like you said, and went into ownership, but they don't actually know anything about the plant. So then they need the grower, but they don't value the grower. So the grower dips. They're trying to find someone else for that position. There aren't that many master growers at all. And what happens is the quality of your crop tanks, you try to get that out onto the shelves, people stop buying your stuff. Like because there are so many producer processors in the state of Washington, as a consumer, if like you start giving me bad options, I'm just gonna find another one on the shelf like that's gonna give me the good ones. And what does that do? Ruin you. And so that's why we're trending downward. Like people are like the small businesses, they're not surviving what's happening as a result of the recession. And it's not that people are spending less money on weed, because that's not true. They're chasing deals, and or they're going back to the legacy market and buying their weed there, because you know what's always going to be cost effective, my homie. You know, like so it's not even just bad business, but it's also lack of understanding of the culture of cannabis. And if you employ like more people who really got a grasp at that in higher positions, they could help you push that, but they don't. Right. So it's disheartening, but I know who will wade through these trying times in the cannabis industry, and really, and that's happening across the nation, right? Are those that are highly tapped into the culture and have made a connection with the community of users, and also jumped into the online social media world. Like you do that combination of that direct engagement with your consumers, because I only have 5 to 10 minutes, right, with your product. Like with a customer, maybe if they're bored that day, it's 30 minutes and I am stressed, but I only have a certain amount of time to sell them on your product. But if I had a place I could point them to, right, where they could get to know more about your company or more about your organization, like your social media, then that creates another relationship with them. Like if they feel like if they got the like this was the best eighth they ever smoked, usually they come back and tell me and thank me for helping them. But sometimes they want to like thank the growers. Sometimes they want to be like, okay, what's going next? And if I can send them to your social media, boom, you know what I mean? Like you have someone locked in with you wherever you go. And most cannabis business owners, like they're nerds, they're geeks, they're not like, and not in a bad way, but they're very introverted, they're very shy. So creating that social media relationship, if they don't have the capital to hire someone, like it's lacking. Like you search up a brand, you might find a lackluster website that's not up to date. You might find an outdated social, and they need to stay on that right now to be relevant. And I just went down a wormhole. Let's bring it back. How does cannabis play a role in your life?
Sure, for sure. It's definitely, it's a family thing, you know, like my mom smoked weed for forever. My Oma, her mother, Oma is grandmother in German. She used to smoke a little bit back in the day. My uncle be smoking, everybody be smoking. Now that it's legal, everybody be smoking.
Right.
So, but when I was growing up, it was like the worst thing ever, you know, like, and I was very like, I was kept sheltered, you know, and I didn't know what it was drugs, you know, I didn't know what it was, just to grow up and be like, oh, this is a plant. And I'm happy that you brought, you used the word culture, because that is so important, that that there is this, well, you know, it was quickly colonized when they made it legal. Like they were like, okay, we're gonna make this legal and colonize it. And so decolonizing it as quickly as we can, because it is this like, you know, you're working with nature and it is this ancient and sacred practice. So I just wanted to uplift that a little bit, especially with these people who are, you call them master growers. And I'm just like, I just feel like they need to be acknowledged. Just like folks who actually like don't take days off to tend to this living being that we put into our bodies and use for very, you know, various reasons. So
yeah, shout out to
in my life, yeah, yes, shout out to y'all. In my life, it's like it's kind of it's a thing that I do when I'm done for the day. You know, like okay, I've knocked all these tasks out, everything's how I like it now, and I don't have anything I need to like think about. I'm gonna smoke. But also, and it kind of I go through waves also. Like lately, I've been smoking a lot, like first thing all day long. So I'm like, and it's I'm like knocking all my stuff out also. Um, but as a homeschooling mom, I definitely notice the difference when I'm feeling like stressed. If I smoke, it gives me more patience. So um, you know, shit. Sometimes kids are asking a lot of questions or giving you a lot of pushback.
mom.
They don't. Yeah, mom. What about this? Mom, why do I got to do that? Do that? And sometimes you just like. Sometimes you want to yell. That's also something in my family that is like a pass down. The adult, the woman, the lady of the house, she will yell if you don't get your shit done. So, but I don't like to practice that. So, not that I haven't, but
Amen.
I don't want to, you know,
Right.
I want to be able to communicate in a healthy way where it doesn't feel like you're being attacked verbally. Um, and so, yeah, I'm good for like in the weed. I called it the patience pipe. Uh,
Very smart
for a
of you.
little bit there because I come back and I'm like, what do you want to ask me? You know, like mom has all the time now, like, and there's no, you know, it's a marijuana minute. So I'd be like, feeling like we can spend as much time talking about this as you want to, because nothing is more important than what you're asking me right now. And, you know, I got all the time to answer your questions. So,
I call it joint time just because like
yeah,
I never know how long I'm gonna stay in a place. It depends on how long this joint takes to burn. The conversation we have with it is, you know what I mean? Like the time just slows down when you, and that's how you know time
yes,
is actually relative. Like if you smoke some weed,
yes,
you'll then really grasp that it like it's made up. It's a made up construct. It takes as long as however it needs to.
yes.
But I'm like that is awesome to hear how you use it and the phrases that you speak because most people have a hard time creating language with their children about not only their cannabis use but just like how it plays a role in their life, right? And so just
Mm-hmm.
making it instead of like, you know, that's my pot pipe, it's like my patience pipe because I need to calm down. Also, I've seen like I fall into mom TikTok or social media a lot because my sorority sisters in my circle, they all have children. So and something I saw today was about sensory overload, like and how
Mm-hmm.
frustrating it'd be like if you have a partner or a partner's there that it doesn't affect them at all, but maybe you as a person has like a sensory disorder, not diagnosing you, but I know if I'm high, if three people are asking me questions at the same time, I can like sort through all that noise and be like, bing, bing, bing. It slows down my thoughts. But if I am not high, I haven't, you know, maybe slept enough, ate some food, I haven't met
Mm-hmm.
my
Mm-hmm.
needs. I'm probably just gonna like my eyes gonna start twitching real quick and just like just start breathing through it.
Yeah.
So weed makes it possible to avoid that sensory overload, almost slow it down, process it a little bit easier. Each thing that comes at you, your response to your emotional state, like it makes me more aware of my emotional state too. So
Mm-hmm.
um
Mm-hmm.
do you
Mm-hmm.
fear backlash from the stigmas attached to it being a mom? I mean, like now they're not in school, right? So that's
Not anymore. I don't fear it anymore. When I was younger, you know, and before it was legal, it was always like, oh God, yeah, there was some fear, there was some anxiety. Um, you know, these days, after all these years, I have a whole 13-year-old. I've been doing this mom shit for over a decade. I'm like, nah, you ain't gonna tell me nothing. Straight up, because I'm always trying to be better as a mom. Always. That's the most important thing in my life. Um, And so, yeah, I'll be damned if you shame me about smoking a little weed, you know, and because it's not like, because we don't keep it's not a secret, you know
Right.
what I'm saying?
Like,
It's like this is a topic of conversation. I think that it's detrimental to our youth to keep substances, the conversation around substances, their actual effects, where they come from, how they work. It's detrimental to keep that away from them. Like, we smoke cigarettes, we drink our alcohol when we're breastfeeding. You know what I'm saying? It never, for those of us who use those type of things, like, we don't stop, but we'll keep it away from them. Like, no, you can't have this, but we won't have the conversation about why. Like, oh, well, because, you know, when I drink this, it comes from a grape, and then it turns into this, and that scientific process, when I drink it, it makes me feel this way. And I think a
right.
lot of that is too because we don't even understand why we're doing it. Then
Mo-
I'm being specific about alcohol, right? And
Right.
it's, you know, because alcohol is a different beast. And so just to compare, you know, it's like there's really no, unless you're dubbed an alcoholic with a problem, there's no stigma
Right.
around drinking, which I think is very strange.
But
And so I challenge that because it's like, why aren't we talking about, you know,
because
how
they lifted
wasted you got?
the prohibition of it, because there used to be a stigma. If you look at the history of alcohol in this country, like there was a time where
Mm-hmm.
it was run by the mob, like that's how you got your
Mm-hmm.
liquor, you know, or like the well, like hillbillies running the distilleries in the corners. So
Right.
you had to go through some extra routes to get your alcohol, and the people who did that were the loose ones. And then they lifted the prohibition. It became very mainstream, and not only like not just mainstream, but alcohol runs a lot of this country in
Mm-hmm.
lobbying power.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, like
Mm-hmm.
politically, they make moves happen to ensure that they continue to make money. And why? Because the government eventually saw where they could get their dollars and cents, and it's taxed heavily everywhere, even trying to ship alcohol, like the whole industry. And that's
Right.
where cannabis will get to. But first, they had to make that stigma. They had to. It was a medicine. Then they made it illegal. They yanked it from medicinal purposes. Then they slowly let it go back. But after they own a patent on it, and
Mm-hmm.
then big pharma gets their like trying to
Mm.
incorporate enough of those master growers, the culture of cannabis, which has resisted for so long, integrate the newer people into their system so that they can figure it out and make it federally legal. It's like the blueprint
Mm.
is very clear of what they're trying to do. The only problem is that they can't account for the fact that real people who like mess with cannabis will always follow culture. Like you can't you
Mm.
like they tried it with the legal markets going corporate, but all like the corporate structure and
Mm.
what they're seeing in all the older markets is that their strategies for taxation isn't working. The
Mm.
corporate structures are failing in certain areas because people will backdoor it and they'll do whatever they need to keep the extra money coming in because it's overtaxed legally. And folks
Mm.
remember when it was just from the person who grew it to the person who wanted to smoke it. And like, so as long as that exists, um I could go down a wormhole of like why it's criminalized and the like, but that entire process is how we get to a stigma at being a mom. And I want more people to, like you said, use like cannabis intentionally, right? Learn, figure out like, I mean, I started smoking at 14 and I would never recommend that what I know about brain development to anyone
Mm-hmm.
now. But
Mm-hmm.
had I received appropriate medical care, I would have known that, you know, my mental health is more balanced when I consume cannabis. My chronic pain because of the curvature of my spine is helpful because, and I, you
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean, because of cannabis. Like, my PCOS is all of these ailments that I had been like surviving with for decades. I didn't find out till this year, right? That had been going on. But guess why I
Mm.
turned to weed first off? Like, you know, like originally, and I made it through all of the life's changes as a result of being able to rely on cannabis. So,
Right.
and battling stigmas, and my mom thought, you know, like She definitely thought that I was that wayward child. Meanwhile, I'm in school getting degrees, doing what I need to do,
Right.
figuring it out. And she saw the difference when I couldn't legally smoke weed. This girl is crazy. Like, what is going on? And it's just,
Right.
I wasn't regulating all of the things. I didn't know how to deal with it anymore because weed had been there for me the entire time. So that's when I began, like, after not being able to consume for a period of time, I started using it more intentionally. Like, okay, so what am I consuming? How does it make me feel? Okay, well, when do I need to feel like this? And that then you get more and more into the science, the
right.
like strains, and yeah. Go down the road.
And that's so to tie that conversation about, you know, learning the science of it into the conversation about stigmas with parents is we have to have a come to God, come to Black Jesus, that this is now a very profitable profession. And your child may be drawn to cannabis. And it could be because you might never use it a day in your life, don't keep it around nothing, but they've seen it somewhere and they're drawn to it. And that is spiritual. You know, that is something that's out of your control. And so are you going to be the parent who's like, no, don't follow your passion, even though like nowadays there's a whole pathway you can take, you know.
Right.
Or are you going to educate yourself and then educate your child? You know, we are our children's first educator, which is why like I am in the realm that I am, where like I decided I was going to homeschool my kids, because I am the first person who is responsible for their direction in life. And when you know better, you do better. So I know that these institutions aren't set up for my Black boys to thrive and survive, you know, just straight up. And I've experienced it. And when you know better, you do better. So that's what I did.
Go our
and yeah, go our generation. We out here really
doing it.
Really being the change, like for real, you know, because I mean they've been feeding it to us for so long. We've been knowing we had to save the planet and do, you know,
all of
like I remember selling like T-shirts and magazines to save the rainforest and you know all those things. And like we know better now, right? It's more important that you're having conversations, in my opinion, conversations, and then making intentional decisions as a human on about your ecological footprint.
Right.
I say all that to say that, yeah, you can either succumb to fear and stigmas, or you educate yourself and then you share that knowledge, especially when you're a parent. Especially, there's no reason to keep secrets from your little people, the youth, and that's a big part of your minis, and not even the ones that aren't yours. And I tread lightly with that. I'm very cautious because my pedagogy around raising children is very different. You know, like not everyone. I don't get a lot of people who push back when I tell them about how, you know, how I approach parenting. They're always like, "Oh, damn, wow, that's pretty impressive." But I know that there are those people out there that can be like, "I cannot believe that she would." Her kids know that she smokes cannabis, that she smokes weed, and it's like, yeah, like why would
how to grow a tomato plant?
Exactly. So it's you have to be willing to unplug from what media tells you, and even learned experiences, because sometimes it's not what you read or what you heard. It was the rules in the home, you know. It was, and they actually just learned that from granny and grandpa, and like it doesn't serve us anymore. We have to recognize when certain mindsets don't serve us anymore. And we're at this day and age now where that shit just don't serve us, because we are talking about a plant. And I'll just, you know, it is a spiritual thing. That's the other piece that I left out as far as using cannabis is, for me, depending on what I am, and actually the past couple of days, whatever strand I have, it's opened me up for channeling spirits a lot. And so certain strands I will be like wide open to spirit, and like I'll be hearing all type of stuff. It's moving me in this way, moving me in that way, you know. Oh, that one thing I've been thinking about is that creative idea that I've been holding on to is finally coming to fruition. Like I have the energy to knock that thing out. But yeah, I got some weed from the honey party at Rose Temple Bar a couple weeks ago, and that one's got me real open to spirit. I don't know what it is. I want to grab it, low key. I'll send it to you later, maybe, so because you'll probably know. But there's like no details on it. I just know that like spirit been talking.
Yes, to all of what you said. I said in my closing thoughts, I was like, thankfully, my mom at some point, and me being a Taurus, I'm gonna get my point across. You feel me? Like, and so I was like, you know, what you're showing me doesn't really match my real world experience. And then I was able to like educate myself enough on cannabis and then turn around and be like, Mom, this is why it's going to be profitable as a business to focus on it this way. And this is why I use it. Me being very clear with how I used it in my life, I was able to tell her, a person who's born in a generation where all drugs are bad. You know what I mean? There's some things they experimented with, but I could say, yes, drugs are bad, but weed has been around a lot longer than that concept of all drugs are bad. And this is how it's good for me. And me being confident and determined what I said, she's like, well, okay, well, you know yourself, you know, she trusts me. That trust has to be there, and that ability to talk about your use has to be there. Like, you don't want your kid fearful of coming to you with the things they're using, because then that leads to a lot of negative influence in the outside world. Like, you want to be able to check where their head's at. So and it is most important when you're dealing with other people's children to figure out how they parent. But what's next for Just Call Me Nas?
Oh yes. Well, I'm wrapping up my project with my mom. Sort of. I'm shifting gears to finish a project with a company that I've been invested in for several years now, called Black and Tan Hall. So we're a venue space out of South Seattle.
You be out there with the vibes.
Yeah. So we have a physical space, 5608 Rainier Avenue South. I encourage you all to go check out the website, check out the socials, blackandtanhall.com. We have a really amazing community report that we've been doing for the past few years, so you can really like hear the whole story. I don't have enough time now to go into it, but we're getting ready to open the door. So I will be stepping back into more of a leadership role within that company. I will announce that soon on my social medias. We're not quite ready to announce that. So got to cross a few T's, dot a couple I's. But we'll be opening hopefully by New Year's is the goal. So check that out. I'll also be pursuing my own creative ventures. So I'm getting ready to launch Just Call Me Nas ENT, which is where I'm going to be putting all of my creative endeavors. So I sing. I love to sing. I'm going to be working on a project, and that's all I'm going to say about that. I also recently received an apprenticeship that I can't announce yet, but I will be. But the apprenticeship is for vocals. So yeah, I have to wait to announce that too. I'm waiting for the email to announce that. That'll be on my. Yes, a lot's in the works. And then on top of that, probably the biggest thing, well, not the biggest thing, but it's a big shift for me is on my website, I'll be launching subscriptions. And so I'm going to be giving folks a lot more of me. I've been building my brand on Instagram for like 13 years now, actually, because my son is that old now. And I remember I first started Just Call Me Nas when he was born. So like Instagram was just popping at that time. So I have started holding back a lot more just because I've been so busy, and social media is a crazy place to be. And I value my story so much, and I value my privacy so much that I finally like got enough energy to get the idea that was in my head for the past few years down and into my Wix editor. And so I'll be launching some subscriptions so that folks can learn more about my personal, intimate life and more of my endeavors. There's gonna be lots of videos and poetry and editorials that I've been working on for years. Like the one thing we didn't get to that I do with businesses that I partner with is like I just support their brand. Like I'm wearing Canna sweat today, you know.
I was about to say that. Shout out to you know.
Yeah. And she and I went to high school together. So it's been really amazing to watch her brand Glow. She was someone who I reached out to COVID, first year of COVID. And I was like, girl, I have this idea. Do you want to do it with me? We would do workouts on live on Instagram. I called it Tone Up Tuesdays. And I was like, I was and still am really focused on my fitness goals. So we just kind of partnered, and she's like taking it to a whole nother level, like full fashion line and producing multiple events.
They pop.
And so like that's one of the other things that I do with folks. It's just genuinely, organically promote their business. I break bread with them. I spend money with Black businesses, especially. Buy their products, buy their services, and then I just share it with folks. That's the thing that I started off doing, and it's the thing that I still continue to do, and will continue to do. So I am looking for partnerships, and that looks like a lot of different things. Like it can be an exchange of services, and that's mostly what I do right now is an exchange of services. If I can afford you, I'll do it that way too. But you know, a lot of people businesses is growing. So
Right.
I'm not gonna say out of my, I can't even afford y'all anymore.
Right, inflation and whatnot. But it does make sense in the sense of economics, right? Like the Black dollar does not circulate enough in our community, so
right.
Supporting Black-owned businesses or BIPOC-owned businesses is the direct route to changing the wealth of BIPOC individuals in America. We want to get out of there. We got to keep our dollar instead of but the issue is like you got to own the distribution of products. There's so many facets that people don't pay attention to or are just starting to pay attention to. So when folks tell me like wake up, like that's the reality I want you to wake up to, that there is all like we thought that like maybe getting your name out there might be one of those things, but like tangibly giving back and creating change in our communities, even small scale, matters for the circulation of our money. So owning Black banks, like all of the like. Well, thank you for your time here on Potheads Pondering. And now you guys get to know a little bit about Miss Miller here and why she made it onto Potheads Pondering as not necessarily a pothead, but a cannabis, like a, what is it? It's not an aficionado. Give me a word for that. Like where would you go? Like
lover, supporter,
yeah. We need more people like you, and I just think because that is a representation of a lot larger cannabis community than someone like myself, right? So I try to make sure that my brand reaches all forms of cannabis consumers, because you can get like me. It's just you got to dedicate time and energy to it. And if you don't want to, just know where you put cannabis in your life and be consistent about it, right? The ones that I want to get to come around are the individuals that use it all the time. Like it's a big part of their financial budget, but no one in their life knows. Like come out the closet. Come out of the closet. Join us.
Yes.
Right, because the popular vote of people enjoying cannabis is continuing to rise in all the states. We're like 19 19 recreational states, like 40 something medically endorsed states, and so get on board. Anyway, thank you and have a great evening. And
thank you.